It was the kind of rain that makes you think something's about to happen. Thick. Cold. Relentless. Altiplano Prison, Mexico's most secure fortress, sat silent in the darkness. The guards were in their chairs. Monitors glowed faintly. Cell 20's feed blinked, then steadied. Joaquín Archivaldo Guzmán Lora, known to the world as El Chapo, was pacing. 12 steps. Pause. 12 steps back. He'd done it 100 times before. But this time, he wasn't coming back. 8:52 p.m., July 11, 2015. In one of the most tightly controlled prisons in the Western Hemisphere. The most wanted drug lord alive disappeared. There were no alarms. No guards called out. The door never opened. And yet, El Chapo was gone. His escape wasn't just a security breach. It was a declaration. A challenge. And a complete embarrassment for an entire nation. To understand how we got here, we have to go back. Back to the hills of La Tuna, a dusty village in Sinaloa. Where boys either became farmers, or ghosts. Joaquín was neither. He sold oranges as a child. But in a land where crops couldn't compete with cocaine, ambition came fast, and bloody. By his teens, he was hauling drugs on muleback. By his 20s, he was trusted by the most dangerous men in the hemisphere. But El Chapo didn't want to carry drugs. He wanted to move them faster than anyone. Under the soil. Over the mountains. Across the sea. He wasn't loud. He wasn't tall. But he was watching everything. He studied how the federals worked. Which judges accepted bribes. Which border agents looked the other way. He didn't just build a cartel. He built an infrastructure. Smuggling routes, underground tunnels, airstrips, ports, shipping companies. El Chapo created a shadow economy that ran smoother than the country's own. By the early 2000s, El Chapo's Sinaloa cartel had become the most powerful drug syndicate in the world. And for every brick of cocaine that crossed the border, someone was paid to stay quiet. Judges. Politicians. Police. Even journalists. He was arrested in 1993. Escaped in 2001. Arrested again in 2014. But always, he came back stronger. To many, he wasn't just a trafficker. He was a folk hero. A man who embarrassed the state, gave jobs to the poor, and waged war on rival cartels with brutal precision. But to his enemies, he was death in a black SUV. When he was captured again in 2014, the message was clear. This time, he's not getting out. He was flown by military chopper to Altiplano. This wasn't just any prison. This was the Mexican government's answer to criticism. It had 24-hour surveillance. Walls 2 feet thick. Soundproof cells. Signal jammers. And a monitoring system where every second of movement was recorded and stored. Even the floors had pressure sensors. Even his food tray came on a motorized track to avoid direct contact with guards. Inside cell 20, El Chapo barely spoke. He didn't complain. He didn't pace frantically. He studied. Every guard rotation. Every camera angle. Every slight delay in the feed. He didn't break down. He played the long game. They say he kept a pencil behind his ear and drew rough sketches of the walls. Of the plumbing. Of the rhythm of the hallway guards' boots. Not for art. But for something else. Something mechanical. Something underground. Altiplano had never been breached. Not once. Until now. And what no one outside that prison knew was that months earlier, a small, nondescript property had been purchased just 1.3 kilometers away. No red flags. Just a dusty plot. One shed. And one secret. Underneath its floorboards. Someone had started digging. Quietly. Slowly. Relentlessly. The workers weren't locals. They came in pairs. Wore plain clothes. Didn't stay long. And spoke quietly in languages the neighbors didn't understand. They weren't criminals. They were engineers. Specialists in excavation, airflow, and structural safety. They brought blueprints, lasers, ventilation equipment, and a rail system designed for just one man to ride. And yet, Altiplano noticed nothing. The cameras didn't see. The ground sensors didn't twitch. The guards didn't hear. Because El Chapo wasn't escaping like a prisoner. He was escaping like an architect. And then, someone inside Altiplano received a tip. No name. No follow-up. Just one message. He's going to do it again. And still, no one believed it. Altiplano. A fortress carved from concrete, fear, and paranoia. Located 70 miles west of Mexico City, surrounded by remote fields and tight perimeters, it wasn't just a prison. It was Mexico's message to the world. No one escapes this place. The walls were reinforced steel-reinforced concrete, 2 feet thick. There were no windows in the cells. Only steel doors, security glass, and silence. All communications were jammed. No radios. No cell phones. No outside signals. Even helicopters needed permission to fly overhead. Every hallway was under constant surveillance. Every corridor lined with motion sensors. Every cell tracked by pressure plates embedded in the floor. Inmates were isolated, stripped of routine, stripped of human contact. Each prisoner was transferred in a steel cage within a cage. Altiplano wasn't just a prison. It was a labyrinth of surveillance. And at the heart of it was Cell 20. The cage within the cage. This is where El Chapo lived. Not in a mansion. Not surrounded by bodyguards. But in a concrete box with a toilet, a bed bolted to the wall, and a small shower stall built into the corner. The light never went out. The cameras never blinked. The floor buzzed faintly, always alive with electricity. He ate what was given. Slept when permitted. And for the first time in decades, his empire ran without him. Or so it seemed. Guards entered every 3 hours. Not 1, but 2. No exceptions. One watched. The other inspected. His food came through a slit in the door. His waste was removed through a sealed port. There was no privacy. Even the shower, surrounded by 3 solid walls, was monitored with a ceiling-mounted camera. He was allowed 1 visitor at a time. Hands on the table. Glass between them. Microphones listening. Guards watching. But El Chapo never panicked. He didn't rant. He didn't plead. He observed. He watched the guards, listened to their footsteps. He learned their habits. Their moods. Who talked too much? Who looked away? He played polite. Never confrontational. Always cooperative. Even friendly. Some said he smiled often. Others said he barely blinked. But all agreed on one thing: he was calm. Too calm. Behind the scenes, the Mexican government was confident. Press briefings were held. Statements made. This time, he will not escape. They opened channels with the DEA. They began secret meetings with U.S. Justice Department officials. A quiet plan was forming: extradite El Chapo to the United States. There, in a supermax prison, he would be completely cut off. But it was delicate. Political. Timing mattered. The DA wanted him fast. They didn't trust Altiplano. They didn't trust Mexico's justice system. But Mexican officials pushed back. Let us keep him just a little longer. They insisted they were watching him. That nothing could go wrong. That no one could reach him. But they underestimated the man in Cell 20. They underestimated the reach of the Sinaloa cartel. And worst of all, They underestimated silence. El Chapo didn't need to break the walls. He only needed someone to open them. Not everyone, just a few. One man to look away. One man to share a blueprint. One contractor to ask no questions. He had billions. He had time. And he had already done this before. Remember. In 2001, he escaped from Puente Grande prison in a laundry cart. In full daylight. Right under the noses of armed guards. Altiplano believed it was invincible. Because on paper, it was. But papers don't dig tunnels. People do. And while El Chapo paced his cell. While guards yawned at screens. While ministers gave press conferences. In the dirt beneath cell 20. Someone was already scraping steel against stone. Inches at a time. Minute by minute. Shift by shift. And no one heard a thing. At first, it was just a vibration. A low hum. Almost like a bad wire in the wall. One guard thought it was the plumbing. Another joked it was the devil under the floor. But by early July, it became undeniable. A soft but distinct sound. Rhythmic. Repeating. Digging. It came from under cell 20. Beneath the floor. Beneath the shower. A report was filed. Noted. Flagged for review. But no inspection was made. No infrared scan. No seismic test. Because cell 20 was secure. Too secure to fail. Too expensive to doubt. And El Chapo? He was right where they wanted him. Wasn't he? On July 10, 2015, one day before the escape, 2 guards assigned to cell 20 were rotated. Official reason? Personnel fatigue. Replacement guards were briefed. Minimal detail. Short shift. That same night, the vibrations stopped. Total silence. The tunnel was finished. And no one suspected a thing. Not the DA. Not the guards. Not the nation. But under cell 20. The door was all ready. The next night, they would hear the sound again. Only louder. Clearer. It's coming from the floor. Like someone's digging. But by then, it would be too late. Open. They would later call it the most sophisticated prison escape tunnel in modern history. Not because it was just deep. Not because it was just long. But because it was perfect. 1 mile long. 30 feet underground. Lined with ventilation tubing. Lit from end to end. And at its heart, a custom-built, rail-mounted motorcycle. Built for one man. One escape. And one message to the world. You can cage a man. But you cannot cage power. The operation began over a year earlier. Quietly. Legally. It started with the purchase of a small property on the outskirts of Altiplano. Nothing extravagant. Just a shed, really. A dusty lot. An old structure. The buyer used a fake name. A fake ID. The paperwork passed without suspicion. But under that land, a secret would be born. Who were the builders? That part remains murky. Some say they were cartel foot soldiers. Others say, engineers from Europe. Brought in under fake identities. Housed in safe houses. Paid in cash. Trained in mining, airflow, and excavation. They didn't speak much. They didn't ask questions. They knew exactly what to do. And exactly when to disappear. The digging began in silence. No drills. No machines. Everything was manual. Steel pickaxes. Shovels. Buckets. They worked in 3 shifts. Day. Night. Graveyard. 24 hours a day. 7 days a week. No one heard them. Because Altiplano's surveillance didn't cover the outside. And the cartel had studied the satellite windows. Every 5 meters, they installed support beams. Every 20 meters, ventilation fans. LED lights were strung through the tunnel like veins. Airflow was calculated. Temperature, too. The rail system? Custom made. 2 parallel steel bars welded to the floor. And a small motorcycle, modified with a guide rail and electric motor. He could ride it like a ghost train. No noise. No steering. Just throttle. But here's the chilling part. They didn't build it blindly. They had schematics. Blueprints. Leaked. From inside Altiplano itself. They knew the exact position of cell 20. The floor layout. The thickness of the concrete. The location of the shower. Even the plumbing routes. That wasn't luck. That was betrayal. Altiplano's internal cameras used night vision. Heat sensors. Motion trackers. But all focused above the floor. They never watched beneath. Because no one believed escape was possible from the bottom. And so, as the ground trembled below cell 20, the screen stayed green. The guards stayed calm. And El Chapo waited. The final piece of the puzzle was timing. The guards rotated every 8 hours. Camera systems reset every 2. The floor vibrations were logged, but dismissed. Then came July 11th. The tunnel was complete. The air was clean. The rail system worked. And the hole beneath cell 20's shower was open. El Chapo stood up. He paced twice. Looked at the camera. Then turned toward the shower. The lights flickered. The feed skipped. A final vibration. A breath. Then, he crouched. Slipped through the hole. And disappeared into the dark. No one saw it live. The camera glitched for 7 seconds. When it came back, the cell was empty. Below the surface, he moved quickly. The bike was waiting. He mounted it. Twisted the throttle. And vanished into the earth. It would take him less than 2 minutes to travel 1 mile underground. Above ground, alarms were still silent. Guards still watching. Cameras still green. He was already out. Already past the perimeter. Already gone. He emerged beneath the floorboards of the same property that was bought over a year ago. Stepped out. Dusted himself off. Walked into the night. A waiting car took him. No police. No helicopters. No roadblocks. By the time they realized he was gone, he was already miles away. Riding a tunnel to freedom. When guards opened cell 20 and found it empty, silence swept through the hallway. Not just shock. Not just fear. But something far heavier. Shame. It was supposed to be Mexico's most secure prison. A fortress. A symbol that no one, not even Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán, was above the law. But now, that fortress had a tunnel. And the world was about to know. By 11:30 p.m., Altiplano was in lockdown. Every prisoner searched. Every corridor cleared. Federal agents flooded the prison. Within an hour, helicopters hovered over the compound. Military units set up a perimeter. But it was too late. El Chapo was already gone. And the world was watching. Just after midnight, a call was placed to Los Pinos, the presidential residence. President Enrique Peña Nieto was on a diplomatic trip abroad. He was woken by a call not from his own defense minister, but from Washington. The DA had been informed. So had Interpol. And just like that, El Chapo became the most wanted man on earth. The next morning, July 12, 2015, an emergency press conference was held in Mexico City. Government officials looked pale. The room was packed. Cameras flashed. Questions flew. How did this happen? Who was involved? Where is he now? The answers were vague. Defensive. Hollow. We are investigating. We will recapture him. But the damage was done. And the world was laughing. In less than 24 hours, border checkpoints were overwhelmed. Roadblocks were set up nationwide. Helicopters scanned hillsides. Highways choked with inspections. Even the U.S. tightened its border protocols. Agents circulated new wanted posters. Satellite surveillance was activated. And still, nothing. Inside Mexico's government, the mood turned from panic to paranoia. Because something didn't add up. The tunnel was too perfect. The blueprints too detailed. The timing too precise. Someone on the inside had helped him. Maybe more than one. A full internal investigation was launched. Security contractors. Guards. Technicians. Dozens were brought in for questioning. And then, the numbers started surfacing. $3.8 million. That's how much money had quietly changed hands, over 6 months. Deposits into personal bank accounts. Property purchases by prison staff. Unexplained transfers to offshore accounts. In the following weeks, 34 prison officials were detained. The warden. Shift supervisors. Surveillance operators. The 2 guards who watched Cell 20. By the end of July, 12 of them were arrested. But the damage wasn't just institutional. It was political. President Peña Nieto's approval ratings plummeted. Protests broke out across the country. Marches. Signs. Chants. No más corruption. ¿Quién protege a El Chapo? It wasn't just that El Chapo had escaped. It's that too many people helped him. And too few tried to stop it. Still, the manhunt pressed on. The DEA activated every informant in Mexico, Colombia, Honduras, and Chicago. Interpol scanned air traffic. Tips poured in. Hundreds per day. Some claimed he was in Guatemala. Others swore they saw him in Mexico City. But most were false. El Chapo had disappeared. Again. Weeks passed. Then a month. Then another. Not a trace. Not a word. Not even a whisper. He was more than just a fugitive. He was a myth now. A ghost. But then. Something happened. Far from the cities. Deep inside the Sierra Madre Mountains. A cell phone call was made. Just one. Brief. Encrypted. Untraceable, at first. But a signal pinged. A tower lit up. Then another. And just like that. The ghost had a pulse. He's alive. We found something. Coming up. The final hunt. The betrayal. The shootout. And the moment El Chapo's luck finally ran out. July 2015. The Sierra Madre Mountains bathed in moonlight. Fog kissed the treetops. And a cell phone ping gave away a ghost. One call. One trace. One last breadcrumb. And the most intense manhunt in modern history began. But El Chapo wasn't waiting to be found. By the time signals were triangulated, he'd already moved. He slipped through the jungle like a shadow. Decoys ahead. Lookouts behind. In a labyrinth of safe houses, each one cleaner than the last. He changed clothes every day. He never used the same car twice. Disguises ranged from farm worker, to forest ranger, to priest. His messages? Smuggled in food. Passed through children. Or delivered via handwritten notes inside sealed shampoo bottles. And then there were the decoys. In one case, a double, nearly identical, was sent into a nearby town. He walked into a cantina. Bought a drink. And let himself be seen. Authorities flooded the town. Blocked roads. Set up checkpoints. But by the time they stormed the place, El Chapo was 300 miles away. But nothing matched what came next. In the middle of one of the largest manhunts in history, El Chapo reached out. Not to a cartel member. Not to a lawyer. To an actor. Sean Penn. It was arranged through intermediaries. A Mexican actress. A trail of secret messages. In a remote jungle clearing. And in October 2015, it happened. One of the world's most wanted men sat down for an interview, like a celebrity. The article would later appear in Rolling Stone. Titled El Chapo Speaks. It was surreal. Sensational. And absolutely infuriating. The Mexican government was blindsided. The public was furious. How could he be running from law enforcement, and simultaneously giving interviews? But while the world focused on the headlines, DEA analysts were studying something else. A signal. A location. A slight GPS ping during the interview. Someone in that jungle made a mistake. And the clock started ticking. November 2015. Durango. A safe house was surrounded. Marines swept in. Night vision goggles. Flashbangs. Tactical entry. But El Chapo was gone. Again. Warm coffee still on the stove. And behind a refrigerator. Another tunnel. Weeks later, another lead. This time in Chihuahua. Thermal drones picked up body heat signatures in a remote compound. Helicopters descended. Marines stormed in. But the tunnels had collapsed. Or had been sealed. And once again, El Chapo had vanished. 2 near misses. 3 confirmed sightings. Dozens of safe houses. And hundreds of agents chasing smoke. The myth of El Chapo wasn't just back. It was alive. Breathing. And laughing. Then, everything changed. One final signal. A different pattern. A remote ranch. The voice was matched. The heat signature confirmed. And this time, there would be no interview. We've got him. The signal is confirmed, El Chapo's in a ranch. SWAT teams prepare for the raid. January 8, 2016. Before sunrise. Operation Black Swan begins. Elite Marines. Thermal drones. Choppers whispering over treetops. The target. A nondescript house in Los Mochis, Sinaloa. One more safe house. Maybe the last. 4:30 a.m. The Marines breach the property. Shots ring out. Gunfire echoes through the alleyways. 5 cartel gunmen open fire. 2 are killed. 1 escapes into the sewer. El Chapo? He runs. Through a back door. Into a storm drain. Crawling, soaked, desperate. But it's over. Inside a stolen car, trying to flee the scene, El Chapo is pulled over by local police. At first, they don't recognize him. Then, they see the face. Bloodied. Covered in mud. Wearing a torn tank top and sweatpants. Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán. Was caught again. Back at the house. The aftermath looked like war. AK-47s on the floor. Shell casings across every room. Drug scales. Cash. Bullet holes in the walls. They had prepared for a fight. But not a raid. And certainly not defeat. The images shocked the world. Not because he was caught. But because of how easily it was done. A man who outwitted nations. Brought down by bad timing, sewer pipes. And a routine traffic stop. The press conference came fast. The president smiled. The media exploded. Justice has prevailed, they said. But something felt hollow. This was supposed to be closure. It felt like theater. Then came the leaks. Evidence photos from inside the house. ballistics reports. Guzmán's texts, all deleted. And then, the tunnel. The $50 million tunnel. Fully equipped. Precision built. A marvel of criminal engineering. All, for a single escape. Altiplano's floor was resealed. The shower rebuilt. But something lingered beneath the surface. Because when internal audits resumed, a new list emerged. Names of contractors, engineers, low-level guards. All paid off. But the investigation quietly vanished. Charges dropped. Files sealed. Silence returned. El Chapo's final extradition came 1 year later. He was flown to the U.S. Charged. Tried. Convicted on all counts. The world called it justice. But some called it a trade. Because with El Chapo gone, dozens of smaller factions rose up in Mexico. And the killing never stopped. In his cell today, El Chapo lives in silence. No contact. No tunnels. No escape. But one question remains. Did he fail? Or was this all the plan? A legend. An empire. A ghost beneath the floorboards of history. And maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end. Just a strategic surrender. To build something even bigger. In the shadows. On January 19, 2017, just 1 day before Donald Trump was sworn in as President of the United States, Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán was placed in shackles. Loaded onto a private jet. And flown into history. His destination, Brooklyn, New York. Specifically, the Eastern District Federal Court, known for taking down mafia dons, terrorists, and now, the world's most powerful drug lord. 24/7 watch. Isolated holding. A convoy of black SUVs between jail and courtroom. And the trial that followed was unlike anything America had seen. Over 3 months, 56 witnesses took the stand. 14 were former cartel members. Bodyguards. Hitmen. Lovers. Smugglers. Accountants. They told the story of a man who ran a billion-dollar empire, with violence, paranoia, and brilliance. Guzmán sat quietly. Listened. Smirked. The jury was sequestered. The courthouse was locked down. Snipers on rooftops. Bomb-sniffing dogs. The trial cost U.S. taxpayers $12.6 million. But in the end, it was over. Guilty. On all counts. Today, he sits in ADX Florence, America's most secure prison. No windows. No human contact. 23 hours of isolation. 1 hour of exercise, in a cage. But outside those walls, the Sinaloa cartel didn't die. It evolved. His sons, known as Los Chapitos, took over. Ivan. Jesus. Ovidio. Alfredo. Young. Ruthless. Born into a kingdom built on blood. And they learn from the best. In 2023, Ovidio, known as El Raton, was captured in a bloody raid. 21 dead. Civilians caught in crossfire. But within hours, the streets were burning again. The cartel still had teeth. Still had reach. Still had loyalty. And that brings us to the uncomfortable truth. If El Chapo is locked away, why does his empire still function? If he's silenced, why do new chapters keep writing themselves? There are questions that still haunt investigators. Why did El Chapo agree to the Sean Penn interview? Was it ego? Or a trap? Did he want to be caught? Some believe it was part of a deal. Others say it was a message. That even in custody, he chose when to disappear. And when to return. Because at some point, the man becomes more than the myth. He becomes a symbol. Of power. Of failure. Of control and chaos. To some, he's a monster. To others, a Robin Hood. But to everyone, El Chapo is unforgettable. So now we ask again. Did he lose? He escaped the most secure prisons, twice. Built a billion-dollar empire. Survived betrayal. Humiliated 2 governments. And even after capture, his story continues. He walked into the tunnel. A prisoner. He emerged. Not just free, but immortal. Because legends don't die in prison. They grow. They evolve. They disappear, into myth. And in that myth, El Chapo may never be captured again. If this story made you rethink what power really looks like. If you felt the chill of justice slipping through a tunnel no one saw coming. Then don't let this be the end. Subscribe to True Crime Cartel. Because the real stories, the dangerous ones, the ones they don't want you to hear, are just getting started. Leave a comment below. What do you think? Was El Chapo's escape the end of an empire? Or just the beginning of something bigger?